Okay, well, welcome. I am going to be going back and forth between a few different of the screens on, or the menus on my screen, so I'm not going to run the full presentation slideshow because that takes up the whole thing. So um, hopefully everybody is logged in and hearing us. Again, I think I heard somebody else coming in. We have 21 people now, so we are going to mute you guys all. If you have a question, there's a chat feature on yours. Go ahead and just click on the chat and send the questions in, and then we'll have a question time, and then we'll unmute, and you guys can unmute, and hopefully then that all works. So the first thing that I want to talk about, just that's maybe me. Um, of the year-end stuff is to, why do we do it all? Well, one, because the government tells us we have to, right? And so I keep looking up at the screen, and Cheryl, I think I'm just going to look at you. So nonprofits versus for-profit business, right? Well, the same rules apply. It doesn't really matter. Jean and I went to a seminar this year, just a month or so ago, from Ide Bailey, our CPAs, and they talked about how the IRS is actually increasing their budget for nonprofit audits. And we always think, nobody's ever been audited, but I don't think in the future that we can actually say that anymore or think about it. A lot of the times when you hear people talking, the bishop or Mike, they talk about that maybe one of the next big crisis in the church will be a financial one. And so what we want to make sure of is that we're just following the rules of the government, right? How you get to that point, that's really up to you. We don't tell you how you have to do some things, but we just want to make sure that you're doing and getting the right numbers on the forms. What sometimes we don't really understand, so like, if you need to apply for a grant and you have the, you want your nonprofit, which is the OCD and the IRS determination letter, you call and ask for that. And the reason that you don't have your own is because we're all linked really underneath the USCCB. So our diocese is linked underneath them, and then all of our parishes and all of the entities of the Catholic Church are linked underneath of the diocese. And so we are really a universal church. And I think sometimes, we as a diocese, we think we're just the only diocese or the only thing that's going on. A lot of the parishes, when you're doing your work, you're thinking of your parish. You're not thinking of the diocese or the USCCB in the United States, or really the universal church in the world, because really we are all underneath Pope Francis, which is kind of a weird concept, but it was kind of something that I had to learn when I first started working for the diocese. And so I think that if we think about that, sometimes something that we do wrong, if the government gets to the point where they're trying to do whatever they can, to kind of get into the nonprofit world's businesses, they're going to start nitpicking at different things. And so that's just something that we have to keep in mind. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the vendor 1099. And so I'm going to switch back and forth between ParishSoft and some reports and my presentation. And then in the end, when I'm all done, I will send the PDF out of this PowerPoint. So just know that you will have that, so you don't have to worry about if you miss something on the PowerPoint, okay? So I have that, and then you guys have a copy here. And so a vendor 1099s go to any vendor that does a service work for you. And so if when you buy your products through Hurley's or Lux Candle, those are products that you buy, right? They don't do a service for you. They don't come and install anything or fix anything for you. So you don't have to send a 1099 to them. But you do have to send a 1099 to any service vendor. And I'll have a list of them here in a minute. The best way to do it is, and really it doesn't matter what kind of vendor it is, you can ask them to fill out a W-9, right? So just any vendor that's new, when you start paying a new vendor, just have them fill out a W-9 if you want. If you just want to get in that habit, and a legitimate business will know, they'll fill it out correctly and send it back to you, and then you'll have that on file. Again, any service vendor that you pay over $600 to is what the ones you have to send a 1099 to. Now, the government in their rules book, it actually, I was reading that a little bit yesterday, and it said, you know, you really can send it to everybody if you want. You don't have to worry about, you know, it just being over 600, but I'd say just worry about the 600 or over. I wouldn't send that. Now, if you fail to send 1099 to somebody and the IRS audits you, the penalty can be from $50 a 1099 up to $270 a 1099. So if you were supposed to send out 10 of them and you just didn't do them, and they audited you, I think anywhere from, I think it's 6 to 7 months after the fact or later, it would be $270 a 1099. You would owe the government $2,700 plus any interest and penalties they wanted to fine, you know, assess to you. So again, I think we get comfortable because nobody, I mean, I don't, even in my business world when I was in the for-profit, I did not know, I think I knew one person that got audited of my clients. So you get kind of complacent, but then when you're that one person and you've done something wrong, it's kind of, you know, like a panic sets in. So yeah, so if you go to, first thing, what I do when I am looking at the vendor 1099s, I'm going to get this up here, to see if I've got everybody labeled correctly or maybe who the vendors are, I'm going to go to vendors and I'm going to go to the vendor audit report. I'm going to choose my custom date range and I'm going to put in the full year. And then the first time I go through it, I'm not going to include only my 1099 vendors, because what I'm really doing is I'm trying to figure out if there is a vendor that I forgot to choose or forgot to put as a 1099 vendor that should be. So I'm going to preview. Now, I like to, well, one, because I hate their new update and how they did their reports because it's hard to scroll, but I always export, and I either export to a PDF or, if I can get on there, right, a CSV. For this one, I'll just do a PDF for right now. And actually, I've already kind of gone through it, so I'm going to open my PDF up here. One. So in this report then, when you look at it, and most of you probably know all this, but I'm just going to go through. So if they are marked as a 1099, you'll see that the check mark is there, okay? So I just usually scroll through pretty fast. Oh, that's retirement, Gusson Institute. Okay, so now we have this Automatic Door Group, Inc. So to me, that tells me that I have a W-9 from them already, and they have told me that they are incorporated. So what I would do when I get a W-9 back from a business that they say they did, and if you put your comments right here, so they repaired a swing door here, right? So what we did, we would go into vendor, we bring up, oops, what was that? Automatic door, there we go. So when you're putting your vendors in, most people, and I do this, you put your vendor name in and then it just drops the same information down into the check name. Well, if you want to indicate that they're incorporated so that you know on the report when you're looking at it in the following years or later that they're incorporated, but you don't want it to print on your check, just put in the vendor name, Automatic Door, whatever you want here, comma, INC, right? Then just take it out of the check name. It doesn't have to be on both, okay? And your vendor name actually doesn't have to be your full thing. If you just wanted to put, you know, Automatic Door Inc., you don't have to put Automatic Door Group Inc. The vendor ID or the vendor name itself is just meant to be an ID. It's not necessarily meant to, that's not going to print anywhere on any check that you send out. It'll be this check name right here. So by indicating Inc. right here, you, on your reports, give yourself a great thing, like you can just zip by this then and know that, well, they're incorporated, I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to go through pretty quick. Okay, so we have here, this one, Bounce Around, is considered right now marked as a vendor. What I wanted to show you is we have their W-9 here. Now they are an LLC. So LLCs can be kind of confusing because it's a limited liability corporation, so people think they're incorporated. That's not necessarily the case. An LLC can be, and the case here of a Bounce Around Inflatables, an individual sole proprietor or single member LLC. If they choose this button right here, they need to have a 1099 sent to them if they are a service provider, okay? If they choose this down here, they would have put the X mark right here, then they would need to put something right here. So I have another one here that, okay, let's bounce around, hang on. Okay, so here, this place here, the window place. This is for Milbank.
Oh, yeah.
So they have check marked limited liability company, but they have nothing right here in this area. So that to me then is an incomplete W-9. So if you get a W-9 marked with a limited liability company, but nothing in this spot right here, you need to either call them back or send it back to them and ask them to fill that out. Because what they need to do is tell you, are they a C corporation, an S corporation, or a partnership? If they are a partnership, you still need to send them a 1099. If they're an LLC, C, or S corporation, then they're incorporated just like a regular corporation, and you don't have to send a 1099. All right. And I think I have, so this one here is correctly filled out. So Absolute Productions LLC is a limited liability S corporation. They would not need a 1099. So the most important thing is to watch your W-9s when they come back right away instead of waiting. Like if you're, you know, oh, I got the W-9, stick it in the file, and then it gets to be January 3rd or 4th or 10th, whenever you're going to do your 1099s, and then you look and they have LLC chosen but no type, then you have to get back to them. So make sure you look at your W-9s when they come in. All right, get out of there. So then I'm just going to come down and have a couple of more things. This is our vendor report again. Again, I'm just looking through it to look to see, do I need, okay, so here's a person, a gentleman, right? And he's not marked as a 1099. So what I would see is, oh, okay, well, oh, he was just reimbursed for expenses that he purchased for you. So he probably went out and bought a bunch of stuff for your remodel or whatever it is that you're doing. If you're just reimbursing people for something and they turn in a receipt, you do not need to send them a 1099. Okay, so if we come down here, now we have Frisbee Plumbing and Heating, Inc., and they did furnace repair, and it's over $600. So I would be going, okay, well, there's nothing here indicating whether they're incorporated or not. They're pretty big. I would kind of assume it, but really assuming it's not something that we should probably do. So my next thing I would do is I would come back to my vendors, and I would bring them up, and I would say, okay, is there anything in here? Okay, nothing there. If I go to my 1099s and checks, did I indicate anything here? Well, I didn't put that they're not in, or that they're incorporated. I didn't put a tax ID. So I would assume that I do not have a W-9 for this vendor. All right. So at this point, right now, being December 3rd, is it 3rd today? Yes, I would want to send that W-9 out right away. Big companies that are, you know, known, they're probably going to send it back to you right away. It's the smaller, sometimes mom and pop, it's the guy that, you know, oh, just lives down the street or something that's probably like, okay, I don't want taxes, so I'm not gonna send it back to you. And so that's the one, sometimes it's really better off if right away when you contract with them, say, you know, before we give you your check, we really need a W-9 filled out from you. Can you please fill this out? So that is my recommendation. Always get that W-9 before you send the check. All right. And then I keep going down. I'm going to look at all these. Okay, so here's Jacob. And, well, he was in a choir. He was either a musician or organist or whatever. So he really should have a 1099 sent to him. But we only paid him $300 this year, and I know we're not going to pay him anymore. So I'm not going to worry about it. But again, especially if it's earlier in the year, you just never know. Like if you would have paid him in April and then all of a sudden, you know what, we want him to come back in Christmas or something like that, I would just always say, you know what, Jacob, unless we pay you $600 or more, we won't send a 1099, but I really need you to fill out a W-9 for me. Just easier to have it on file and to, you know, to get it there. So Creer and Blaine, again, you don't know, but they're less than $600. So for right now, I'm not going to worry about it. You might just want to send them one just in case. So if next year you do give them more, you can. Now here's an LLC. Again, okay, so I'm going to just jump back over to PearSoft here a minute. How we talked about in the general tab, if they're incorporated, to put INC here. If they're an LLC, I would put LLC C for corporation, or LLCS if they're an S corporation, or LLCP if they're a partnership, because then that tells you if they're, or I, if they're individual, because that would tell you they're an LLC individual or partnership, you need to send them a 1099. So you have to make sure that those boxes are checked. So here we really wouldn't know by this. Are they incorporated or not? Well, even if they're not, what we're buying from them are prints of the Stations of the Cross. So again, how important when you're reviewing at year end, not only to have your descriptions in there for your finance counsel or your pastor or for you, when you're reviewing at the end of the year, if you put comments in as to what you're purchasing from them, it'll help you out tremendously to know, oh, we don't even really care because it's a product. All right, so we're going to keep going down here. I'm probably going faster than I normally would. I think I have some more down here. So Midwest Alarm. Now, these guys installed an alarm system. So it would be a product, right? So you really probably wouldn't care. But then when I come down here, I look and I see fire alarm monitoring. Now, to me, that's a service. So they are going to service you throughout the year, and you probably signed a service contract with them. So if you have a service contract with somebody, Century Business Products or A&B Business or whatever your local copy machine company is, if you've got a contract with them on your copiers, they are providing you a service. Even though they provided you a product also, you really should get a W-9 from them and then send them a 1099 if they are not incorporated and if they reach the $600.
We have a question on clarifying that if they are incorporated, they do not need a 1099.
That is correct. If they're incorporated, if they're an LLC corporation, they do not need a 1099. If you send them one, and I have this a little bit later in my slideshow, you know, it's not a big deal. So sending a 1099 out that you shouldn't really is not a big deal. They should be sending in, they will have to send in a tax return anyway. So it's not like a W-2 where if you send a W-2 in for an employee that you shouldn't, that's a big deal. But businesses, it's not a big deal if you would happen to do it. But you don't have to. So why do it if you don't have to? All right, we will. Okay, so we've got Power Sound here. So again, they're not marked as 1099, and they did buy a speaker system, but they also installed it. So because they installed it, we need to have a W-9 from them because they are over the $600. And if they are not incorporated, then we would send them the 1099 for the full amount, okay? And that is in the IRS instructions. If they have both product and service, you send the 1099 for the full amount. As a business, then, they would take that and they would take their products and the cost of their products as an expense, which would decrease their income, okay? And then we've got, let's see here. This one here, just another example of one that they refinished the kneelers and the pews. So if they're not incorporated, they would need to have a 1099. And we'll flip down here. Okay, so priests. Priests, if they are substitute priests for you, they will always have to have a 1099 sent to them if they hit $600. But that $600 is only in stipends, not mileage, right? Because the form that they fill out really would be their mileage forms that your own pastors fill out and give to you, which would negate that. So what I would suggest here is to always make sure that you put the stipend as one line and then the transportation as another line. And then when you're in the bill area, we'll go over here. So when you put the stipend in here, and we'll just do this. Okay, that would be marked, but then if you go down to priest transportation,
5140.
there you go. Oops. Okay, you notice it put the 1099 check mark there because as a vendor, Father Bill is labeled as 1099. All you have to do is uncheck that at the bill time, and it will not include that amount in your 1099 amount at the end of the year, okay? So just remember that as you're going through that. And then we'll flip through here a little bit more. And it's really important on the priest transportation to do that now because of the tax law changes last year, where they cannot take their deduction at tax time. They have to take it ahead of time. So here's a construction company. It just says
that went over my head. They can't
take their mileage off when they're doing their taxes anymore. That the IRS took that away last year.
Okay.
So if they want, a lot of the priests would just take all their mileage records to their CPA.
Yeah.
And say take it off. Well, they can't do that anymore. That's not an allowable deduction.
Okay.
And so they have to take it off ahead of time. And so if they don't want to pay taxes on it, they need to give you their mileage logs, and you need to take it off of payroll or.
Oh, I see. Their extra mileage.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
They're 1,000. They're 1,000 miles.
Yes.
Yep. So if they don't turn their 1,000-mile logs into you, you have to leave it on as a taxable wage.
Okay.
And on here, then the priest, the substitute remuneration form that they turn in to get substitute coverage would be their mileage log that they would hand in to you. So normally all substitute mileage would be non-taxable. Okay.
And then are they to take their mileage logs to their accountants or no?
No, they don't need to.
Okay.
Because it's not even on there.
All right.
So here, and now here's just another guy. He's a guy, he refinished their chalice and candlestick. And okay, so right now he's not considered as getting a 1099, but we should have gotten a W-9 from him, and he really, because it's his personal name, that tells me no matter what, he needs a 1099. Now, when we get the W-9 back, he may have his own business, and it may be incorporated. Then we would just have to put that information in. The one thing that I'm going to cancel this here so we don't get a bill, this other bill ad form. In the vendor area, so let's see here, let's just bring that guy up. So if he is incorporated and he just has his own, yeah, he just gave you his name to do it, and you can come over here and you can actually, again, and I'm probably going about this backwards. Let me think about this differently. Not the guy. Let's do absolute green here. Okay, so let's say absolute green is not incorporated, which they're not. They are considered a 1099 vendor, but they just, they have you write the check to, I know, I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank on this, but you don't have to have the full business name here, okay? You can just put an abbreviated name. And then in the 1099 checks area, this is where, if you have a name here, right? If you have a name here, that is what we'll print on the 1099, not what's on the front, not the check name or the vendor name. So there's 3 different uses. If your vendor name, and I think I got rid of all my W-9s here. Oh, no, I didn't. So this is, okay. So this one here, this name right here, this is the name of the business, the MBAF, Certified Public Accountants LLP, all right? So they are a partnership, and they need a 1099 sent to them. But what they go by is solutions at MBAF. They don't go by MBAF, Certified Public Accountant. So if you're paying them as solutions at MBAF or White Owl, depending upon what is on the invoice that you get, right? Because you pay for whatever the invoice name is. What you would want to do is, if this is their vendor name right here, you would want to put that MBAF, oops, sorry.
Their business, actual business.
You would want to put this name right here in this 1099 area, okay? Because that's what we'll print on the 1099. Now you have to be careful. A lot of times, especially if you get smaller guys that are people, not necessarily guys, but people that are doing their own business, they are great at what they do, but they just aren't the best business people, and they just take all their stuff to their CPAs. When they fill out their 1099s or their W-9s, a lot of times they'll put their name up there, and then they'll put their business name in the second line. Well, if you look at these, so the first name up here is what is supposed to be shown on your income tax return. Well, if they have a business name, especially if they're using a federal ID number down here, you see that an employer ID number, not a social security number, you have got to use the business name. So if you're really confused because they've just put their name both places, you can call them and verify, and just say, hey, did you actually, when you signed up for your federal ID number, did you actually use your name? Did you use Cindy LaBarge as your name, or did you use, your business name or whatever it is? Because really, if you put a personal person's name down, like if you use Cindy LaBarge and then you put federal ID number 201549331, you will get a nasty gram back from the IRS at some point in the next year saying the business name does not match up with the business ID number, and if you don't correct it, then you have to start withholding federal withholding from that vendor every time you pay them, okay? And so that's why it's really important to have the correct name that matches the federal ID number. So if they give you a business name, but they give you their social security number, if they're using their social security number, it has to be their name. So even though their business name might be LaBarge Consulting, but I give you my social security number so you can always, here in the general tab, you could have LaBarge Consulting right here. You could pay the check to LaBarge Consulting, but in the 1099 vendor area, because I'm using my social security number right here, you have got to put Cynthia LaBarge right there. All right, so that's very important, or you will get a little nasty gram back.
Cindy's question regarding the raffles, prizes and raffles for 600.
Okay, so raffles and prizes, let's kind of talk about that at the end, just because it's kind of a bigger, it's a huge,
Yeah, don't do it.
kind of a huge thing. What I want to say about a raffle and a prize is, if it's under $5,000, okay, that is really important. Once the prize hits $5,000 or more, it doesn't matter, you know, what all the calculations before. You have to withhold federal withholding tax from them when they get it, and then you have to send that in. And so keeping it under the $5,000 level is a good rule of thumb. And then it's not the $600 limit doesn't really well, you have to pay them over $600 to send a 1099 or a W-2G. But what really counts is if your raffle ticket, so you take the price of your raffle ticket. So if your raffle ticket is $10, a raffle ticket, you take $10 times 300. And so that's $3,000, right? So if the raffle prize was $2,000, then you do not have to send them a 1099 or a W-2G or take federal withholding out or anything. They just get that $2,000 because it's under that multiplier. That $300 is a key multiplier. So when you're considering a raffle, they are great fundraisers. I get that in a church and I get that you want to do it. But if you take into consideration the $5,000 level, and then also the 300 times your raffle ticket. So if it's less than 5,000, but also less than the 300 multiplied by the times your raffle ticket, actually less the cost of the raffle ticket, then you're still okay. And that's all I'm going to say about raffles right now. If somebody else has a greater deal about a raffle, that's a huge conversation. And just call Jean or I, and we'll go over that with you in more detail if you've already done a raffle and it meets one of those things. All right. So I think we're just about done going through this here. But
I apologize that I was with the Chancery. LLP is limited partnership, and so that they don't need a 1099.
Yes, partnerships need 1099. Yep.
But S or C corporation does not.
Correct.
And anything that says their business name, comma, incorporated, they're incorporated.
Correct. Well, you would assume, right?
Yeah, right,
you
right.
would assume they are. So, I mean, if you want to be, if you want to have their federal ID and have a W-9 on file, send them a W-9. There's no harm in that. But you don't, if I see Inc., comma, INC on an invoice, like, I don't even waste my time. I'm just like, they're incorporated. And if they're not, then they've got they've got some major, I mean, they're going to have more problems than not, so.
And then I looked on the South Dakota Business site and Better Bureau, and I just Googled some of the businesses that I work with, and a little thing comes up about them, and it says incorporated. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, if you want to, you can look out on that website.
Not everybody, I'm finding, that's not like a mandatory thing, not everybody
No.
is.
No, and especially if they're not, if they're incorporated,
They will
they
be.
definitely will be. If they have a federal ID number, they should be out there, but no, not everybody is probably.
Not everybody that has a federal ID number is incorporated?
Correct.
Okay.
Because I could have my own consulting business, right, and not be incorporated,
Yeah.
but once I hire an employee, I have to have a federal ID number.
Okay.
Because, so if you've got a lawn mowing business
Yeah.
or a, grounds maintenance, and they're just, Tom Jones with a pickup and a lawnmower and a blade, they're gonna do all your maintenance for you. Well, they've gotten kind of big, so they're gonna hire some employees, but they still don't wanna, they're just, the local guy and they don't want to incorporate, but they've got employees. They have to have a federal ID number if they have employees, because they have to withhold all the employee taxes and all that. So once they have that, they have to have a federal ID number, but they don't have to be incorporated.
Okay.
So again, here's a Waterbury Plumbing LLC. From what we're looking at right here, we would not know whether these people are incorporated or not. So I think they are, and so I would have just put LLC C or LLC S or whatever there. So as I'm looking at this report, I could just zip by them because I know that they're incorporated.
Really, that for me is a huge thing to do it on their vendor. That's
Yeah.
a huge tip.
Yeah,
Because-
yeah. Yeah, if you just right here again, the vendor ID, this vendor ID could be, you could just put Absolute here, although there's other businesses named Absolute, but Absolute Green and then comma INC if they were incorporated. And then take the INC off of this if it's a new vendor.
Right.
You don't have to have that on there. But this is what's going to show on their report, so that will tell you
And then
very
their
easily if they're incorporated.
company, their proper company name on the,
If you need to send them a 1099 and they're actually have an incorporated name outside, then you put that here, yes. If you leave this blank, it's going to use the check name.
okay.
All right, well, I'm going to just kind of zip through. I'm going to get back over to my PowerPoint here. Okay, this is a list, probably not all inclusive, but of the types of vendors that are service vendors. So any of your grounds, for your parish rectory or cemetery, if you do that, maintenance people, handyman, including parishioners. If a parishioner says, I'm going to come do this, and then you pay them, I would say if you want to give them a stipend, I would probably do it less than $600, because once you pay them $600, it would be hard for the IRS to come in and say, well, you gave them more than $600, why don't you send it 1099? So,
I have a question about mowing. This person is a mower. So he wants to, in order to avoid the 1099, he wants to be paid, and when he reaches his $500, then he wants his child to be paid, and then the wife to be paid. And
no, I would say, really morally,
Yeah, I
the
know
church
that.
really should not do that. And I would just say, the church is in the business of morality,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so,
cheating is not under the
That's not really-
confines of morality.
that's right.
Of a moral.
That's right.
practice.
That's right. So, yeah, I would say that. So, also guest speakers coming in. A lot of people don't realize that they have to have use tax, and then you have to give them, a 1099. Your service contractors, and then remember your clergy are just stipends only. And any musician that you pay that's not on payroll, and anybody tuning your organ or your piano. That's not all inclusive. We already talked about the naming conventions here. I'm going to flip through that. When you do get your W-9s back, I would put them in a separate folder together. I wouldn't put them in the vendor folder because you don't want to file them with any of the year's invoices that you have for them. All right. So now, if you, once you got all your W-9s for everybody, you've marked everybody 1099 that you need to, the one thing that you want to do is I would reprint this vendor audit report here, but I would include 1099 vendors only, right? And just make sure one more time before you print them that your amounts are correct. If your amounts are not correct, this is kind of a really tiny little screen here, but I can maybe make this bigger and just go over it. But in your vendor file, in that 1099 file, you can make any adjustments down here to what, so say you paid the priest, substitute priest, and you included their transportation in, and it's in here. You can come in here and you can do a minus number to get this is the total that's gonna print on the 1099, you can just adjust that so this 1099 amount is correct, okay? So once all your numbers are correct, you go back to your reports here. You go to vendors. You go to 1099 miscellaneous. Make sure that your calendar year is correct. And then down here, basically you're going to print all 3 of these, okay? So you're going to print your 4-up blank paper, and that, just print that. Obviously they all print just like our checks do. They print a PDF first. So print them all to PDF. I usually save them in a folder that just says to be printed. And then for all my year-end forms, I put all my year-end forms, both W-2s and 1099s together. And so the 1099 blank 4-up, and then the 2-up pre-printed, this will print to a PDF, but this is what you will eventually print, right, to your red copies of your 1099. That will be sent in. And then your 1096 pre-printed, again, will print to a PDF that you will eventually print to the red copy of the 1096. So all 3 of these need to be printed. And I'm not gonna do that right now. You'll, you'll have that and see that. Then my suggestion is to send the 1099s to the vendors right away. All right, mail them out as soon as you can after the 1st of the year, because your last check run was dated the December 31st or before. So that if a vendor would have any, I have really never in my career had a vendor call up and say, this is the wrong amount. But if you would, if you send them out right away, that gives them, at least a week or 2 to give you a call and say, hey, you have the wrong federal ID number on here, or you have the wrong business name on here, or something like that. So if you send those out and then don't send the red copies to the IRS right away, wait until, I would say like the 28th, I think the 28th is a Monday this year, January 28th, somewhere 28th to the 31st, and wait until then to send those out, okay? Because that gives any vendor time to call and say, oh, wrong social security number, or wrong federal ID number. And then once the 28th hits, you haven't heard from anybody, print all of your pre-printed ones that you have waiting out in PDF to your red copies, and then get them mailed out to the IRS. But the first thing that you want to do is, after you have Father sign the red copy of the 1096, take a copy of the 1096 signed and all the 1099s that you're going to send into the IRS, and keep those copies on file. Because if they would get lost in the mail, and well, the 1099s are going to be harder because the IRS they aren't going to know that you should have sent them in, right? But if ever you get audited and they say, hey, you never filed these, you have them right there. That's more important really for W-2s, because they would know if you didn't send those in.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
So, paper copy or computer, or both?
Well, it depends. If you don't have a server that's backed up
Yeah.
to the cloud,
Everything's backed up.
to the cloud.
Carbonite, I would guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can just have it on there if you want. We just keep ours online. But we do scan them in.
Yeah.
So we have a big, huge, server here. We've got
Yeah.
off-site backup, and we've got on-site backup. So it's really your comfort level and what you have for technology at your parish. Yeah.
So, I would be more inclined to save the tax stuff,
Mhm.
both. There's both.
Right.
But bills, I scan and I put them in a straight basket.
That's what we do here.
Okay. I don't have to save the paper copies of those.
Well, if you have them scanned
Okay.
and backed up, is really
Yeah.
the most important.
Yeah.
The
So
most
like for them, I-9, my W-2s, W-4s, 1099s, I scan, but I also keep the paper copy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the right way. Okay.
Yep. Okay, now, is there anybody else that has any questions on 1099s? If you have a question on 1099s or anything to do with vendors, you can send it in now or whatever. And then if you think of something, please still send it in through chat. We are going to switch over now to employees. And we're going to have Twyla joined us. And Twyla, which form do you want me to pull up first?
The Word one. Yep.
Okay. Let me. That.
Yep. So I did a quick little sheet of important reminders and kind of a timeline. You guys know that as in the past years, what we're always dealing with this last payroll in December is us trying to get it in time. So what we are asking you to do is process your December payrolls in a time so that you are able to actually do your uploads into Who's Where and then authorize the payment with a payment date no later than noon on December 27th. And that's kind of why I did a little picture there. So the to be withdrawn on has to be December 27th. That is all dealing with the bank rules of where they take it's a 3-day lag. And so if you put it in no later than to be withdrawn on December 27th, then the bank will pull it and we will be able to get it into Discovery Benefits. And this is primarily anybody with a Who's Where, but really even your own payment into us. I'm sorry, anyone that has an HSA or health savings account, but really even just your payment to us, then, you know, we are able to then get into our account before that end of December. So that's why we're saying, please make sure that that date in there is no later than, you know, December 27th. So typically that means you can do your upload into Who's Where as late as about 3 o'clock on December 26th. There's a cutoff there all of a sudden where, you know, you may be at 3 o'clock on December 26th, it'll still allow 12/27, but at, you know, 4 o'clock, it's not going to allow, you can put it in all you want, it won't do it because it's saying the banking time is too close. Okay, so that's really key, really important for us. What we are going to ask people is if for some reason you're not able to accomplish that, to put it in for the next possible payment date, as close to that as possible. Don't, you know, not do it. You need to still do it, obviously. Do it as quickly as you can, but then we need to know because there's a lot of manual process for us on getting those dollars over into those employees' health savings accounts. And then we have to manually track that because their reporting is really all based on kind of the bank income. So that's our first thing that we want to worry about. Number 2, Cindy, if you scroll down. Number 2 is if you have employees or a priest enrolled in the high deductible health plan, you need to wait for an email from us, the HR office, regarding how much you're going to report on your W-2 for that contribution into the health savings account. Okay? So the question we get a lot of times is, I don't know what plan my priest is on. If you look in Who's Where, find your priest in your employee list, go to plan information, you can tell. We have them listed now. Is it priest high deductible plan or priest traditional plan, or that they're priest on a Medicare plan? So it says that in Who's Where, so you are able to look. And once you get those totals from us of what we're saying should be listed on that employee's and or priest W-2, we want, you know, definitely be checking. Is that what your payroll is saying? Because on lay employees in your payroll, you're going to have both sides. You're going to have what that total would normally have just populated your W-2 with. Make sure that you're cross-checking what the total we're giving you. The problem is on the priests, those you are going to have to manually enter because, or however, and Cindy will probably walk through and show you how to do that part, because you as the location don't pay their employer side. We pay it out of the priest plan, and so we do it direct, and that's why we need you guys to wait and make sure that you get the totals and the amounts. Now, when I say that, that is only on the people that have the health savings account. The rest of the things on the W-2, and we'll get to that quickly here, you already have, and we're gonna have you take care of. So I'll explain what I mean by that here in a minute. Number 3, we want you to be sure to update any address changes in the payroll system. And then if you run a new employee record report to use when you're uploading your reports to Who's Where, the upload then updates Who's Where. I know on some of you that are smaller locations, sometimes you'll run that employee record report like one time and you just go back and reuse that one and then run a new payroll record report every time. You know, those are the 2 reports that we have to upload into Who's Where. If you make an address change or a demographic change of any kind to that employee, if you're just going back into a saved report, it's not grabbing it. So we're starting to really encourage people, run a new employee record report every time, just like you do the pay stub report every time. Run those 2 every time. It'll grab any changes that you made. You don't have to remember to do that change, okay? Cindy, if you go to the PDF one then. So just looking at the W-2 and just kind of going back through, what are all those designations mean? So box 12, line 1, you know, like I say, line 1 plus box 12E, which is retirement, the 403B, should be the same as line 3 and line 5. You know, so your line 1, 3, and 5 are not always going to be the same. If they do an employee contribution to their 403B, then those are going to be different. Line 1 and 3 and 5. 3 and 5 typically should be the same. It'd be pretty rare in a parish situation where those would ever be different. So those 2 would be the same, but it is not uncommon for it to be different from line 1 because of that retirement contribution, okay? But then, you know, box 12 and using the W code is employer plus employee contribution into that health savings account. That's where we're saying you need to wait for those amounts from us so that you can make sure that what you're showing is the same as what we have. And then you'll put that. Box 12DD is the cost of employer-sponsored coverage. I'm not going to give you this amount. You would have this in your payroll system. For lay employees, again, it's employer plus employee. It is only health insurance. We get that question a lot. It is only the health insurance, but you're doing all of that. You have the employer benefit side set up on the lay employees. You have the deduction side set up. So that should just populate from your payroll system as long as you have people set up correctly in there. Your priest might be the one, you know, that you've got to, you know, fill in and figure out. And so, and that one is always a little bit more tricky. January to June, it was $900 a month. July to December, it was $920 a month, okay? So if you had a priest, the same priest, all year long, it would be 900 times 6 and 920 times 6. But if your priest left and was gone, you know, transferred, you're only doing the number of months that you had that priest. And then if you got a new priest in, of course, you're only doing the 6 months that you had him, if it's the even 6-month break. We actually have had some different changes at time frames this year. So Cannot stress enough, it's the number of months. So that's why you've gotta go through and figure that piece out. Again, lay employees, it should just come right from your payroll system, so you shouldn't have to worry about that part of it. So that was really the parts I wanted to cover as far as W-2s. I'll turn it back over to Cindy.
And then Twyla's gonna stay around here, so in case I say something wrong or need her help. And then, this screen right here will be on the recorded presentation, but it's not in my PDF, or my PowerPoint, so I'll either stick that in or I'll send a copy of that along with the PowerPoint, so you have that.
And we are going to email this same thing, plus a little bit extra things out to each location, probably, this week.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me just get over to payroll here, get in my, and so the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was really what is included in wages. And I know we've talked about, Twyla has talked about this a lot, but just as a reminder, so obviously just the basic hourly salaried wage, any bonus that you have. So if father wants to give out Christmas bonuses, he needs to do that. Well, I mean, if it's this year, but those bonuses need to go through payroll. You can't, so if he wants to give a $100 bonus and he wants it to be $100 and you need help with that calculation as to what the gross amount will be, just give, Twyla or Jean or I a call and we can help you out with that. If you give birthday gifts out, you can't just give $10 or $15 cash. If you do, you still have to run that through payroll, and then that's kind of a little trickier. So gift cards, you can't just give a gift card. Gift cards are like cash, and it is also considered by the government to be a salaried wage. So if you give a gift card, that's fine. You just have to, again, record it kind of on the back end through payroll. Any gifts given, and potentially, really, with that priest accountability out there now, if you have a parish credit card, if you have a parish debit card, get rid of it, please, and get a parish credit card. You really need to have a receipt for every expense on that parish credit card. And potentially, really, by IRS rules, if the priest does not hand in a receipt, that is potentially a taxable wage to the priest if it is, like groceries or something that he is supposed to be reimbursed for. So, just gonna know that. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is prepare your fourth quarter 941. Now, obviously, hopefully you've been getting your mileage reports from your priest throughout the year, but if you haven't and he wants to take his mileage off, hopefully he doesn't do it all at the very end, because a lot of times there isn't enough wage in some of the smaller parishes to take the full year's mileage off, and it creates kind of a hard thing. That's why we really encourage at least to do it, on a quarterly basis for every 941. A lot of times the priests, we tell them, especially because of the wanting to get payroll done a little early to get the who's where uploaded, just hand your mileage into the 20th of December, and then take the 20th after that and put it into next year. I mean, if you're consistent on it, it'll just work, and do it that way. So, and again, before you process your W-2, make sure you get the information from Twyla, the office. And the reports that I'm going to show you now, I don't know if you remember when I first got here, Denise had, and it's still around, but she had created this reconciliation sheet. You can hand write in all of this information if you want. To me, there's reports out there that I would rather use myself and download even to an Excel sheet. But if you would rather, if you just, like you can hand type something into Excel, you're just not good on some of the other stuff. This is available, and we can email this out to you if you don't have it, okay? But I'm not going to necessarily go over it this way right now. Just know that it's out there. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to do here when I start reconciling, so I've done my 941, okay? Now, you all do these on a quarterly basis, so I'm not gonna spend time doing that. Just make sure your mileage is all taken out of there. If you go to payroll reports and end of period, in here, this taxable pay and withheld report. And if you do it for December of the current fiscal year, and you have calendar year to date chosen, you can preview that report. And then I actually have that exported right here already. So what it does is it gives you each employee, all right, it gives you their gross wage, their Social Security gross, their Social Security that was, that is, you know, out there, not withheld or calculated, their Medicare gross, their Medicare calculated, their federal taxable gross, and then the federal withholding that was withheld. These are the numbers that you are going to need to balance to your W-2s and your W-3, okay? So it comes out, and it does give you the monthly total. I added the little nice line in there, but I like to export that to the CSV file. You know, I told you earlier you could export to PDF or CSV. If you export to a CSV, you can save it as an Excel file. And so this comes out nice, just like this, right? And the state gross and the state, normally I think there's maybe only one parish, and we do their bookkeeping that actually has some Nebraska employees that work for them, right? So most of the time you could actually take this and just delete those columns out of there, or clear the contents, however it is that you're familiar with Excel and doing it. You don't have to, you can leave them there too, that's fine. So the calculations for the totals, right, and for your employees are all right here. So if you were going to do, instead of typing in, you know, if you wanted to print this to PDF and then actually type it into Excel, you know, really why do that? Because it's here, okay?
And that's under records in payroll. Payroll records.
Reports.
Yeah, reports and end of year period, okay.
Yep, reports and end of period and taxable pay and withheld.
Okay.
All right. Now, the only thing that might change on here, right, is father's mileage and his, and I've got it in red here, his federal gross. So what I have in red is what exported out of ParishSoft, okay? So I just went down here and I just, now I don't know how your priest calculate how it turns in his mileage. We do have that priest mileage tracking spreadsheet that they can use. So I don't know how many of them do that, and I have actually an FYI comment about that. I downloaded this off of our website, and it actually has, I think, 2 years ago, it has so right on this page, it had 0.545, not 0.58. So be very conscious that the mileage rate for this year is 0.58 cents, okay? So you can come in, and if they use this spreadsheet, you can use it. You can, if they don't use a spreadsheet, but they hand in paper, I mean, I've seen some pretty crazy, wild, hardly legible mileage sheets, right? So if you want, if that was me getting that one, I would probably come in here and just type it in these numbers here, okay? Which is really what I did over here. And I just did a couple different scenarios. Well, actually I did scenarios on this one. On this side, you have the priest, and so say he drove 1,500 miles this month, 986, blah, 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 down to the bottom, right? So it really all depends upon your priest. Does he want to be reimbursed for any mileage that month? So he'd say, yep, I drove 1,500 miles. I want my mileage overage for the $500, right? So then what can be, what it can be deducted in the end is just 1,000 miles. But some priests say, you know what, I don't want my mileage overages at all, ever. I'm donating that to the church. I just want my 1,000 miles And, so then really, this, if that's this priest, they've, for the whole year, have driven over the 12,000 miles, they can deduct the full 12,000 miles, right? Only 12,000, not the overage, but the 12,000 that you paid them. So what's kind of quirky about this spreadsheet is if they go over, it gives you some really odd numbers down here, okay? So you cannot take off more than what the actual allowance was. Even though it tells you the amount to be edited off here is 73, you cannot take more than this amount right here. So just if you're using that spreadsheet, just kind of be aware and conscious of that, okay? Or, so at the end of the year, too, there are some priests that say, you know what, at the end of the year, whatever my mileage overage is, I'll just take it at that time, and so that I get the 12,000 miles, that I can deduct it all out of my wages, and I'll take the overage. So really, I've just seen it all over the board, and so whatever you do, in this scenario, the priest that wants the mileage overages every time, you can only deduct 11,105 miles off of this priest right here, W-2, right? Because he got reimbursed for all of his months that he had overages, he got reimbursed that month. And so he didn't hit 1,000 miles in all of his months. So really, the calculation works when it's less than 12,000 miles. So really, this priest would only get $6,440.90 deducted from his W-2. All right, so any questions on that? No? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna come back.
If you decide though to do it at the end of the year, then the mileage you can't really deduct well, if they turn it in like this.
They turn it in, you can.
You can from the 941 then.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And then just on the fourth quarter 941, you have to be real careful about what so like, you know, you just have to make sure that you only deduct the 12,000 miles if they hit it.
Yeah.
Or whatever they hit,
Right.
you know, on that, because that fourth quarter can be kind of the.
But if you've deducted each quarter,
Right.
then it'd just be the last one would be that quarter again.
Yes, unless they're doing, you know, so unless they have unless you've deducted the full miles up here, you just can't deduct the full mileage in the fourth quarter because in this
Right.
example, they've overdriven 613 miles. So you can't take the full mileage for the fourth quarter. You can only take whatever you've deducted already away from that 6960.
Right.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in my example, the priest took the full 12,000, right? So I took the 6960 here away from the 21, and then you notice I left the federal gross wages from what was exported, and then I added up my adjusted wage here, and the difference between the two is at 6960. So that's how I know that really then the priest wages should be this. This is what should be on my W-3 form and all my W-2s. So now the only thing that you do have to do manually when you are using this is I went down here and I just hand typed in all these. I get my 941s out for each quarter. I just typed in first, second, third, fourth. And then, you know, the way that ParishSoft exports it is really not a logical way for me. I would start with box 1 or federal wage, but I didn't want to, you know, I thought I'm just going to leave it this way. I'm not going to worry about rearranging my columns. So when I come down here where I add my 4 quarters up, I'm going to put it in the same order that it is up on top. Okay, does that make sense? And so then from here, I just type in the amounts off of my 941 reports for each quarter, right? And I total it up at the bottom. And then what I did, I just did and again, you can manually do it, but I just did a formula, and I did the plus D43 minus D14. And it came out to 0, and that's what I want, right? Now, the only difference will be your Social Security and your Medicare. On your 941, that's going to be both the employer and the employee share. So it obviously is going to be different. But if you take what came off of up on top, which is this right here, they should be approximately the same number. They're gonna be a little off from rounding, right? But a few cents isn't a big deal. And I would say even if it's probably up to $1, I probably wouldn't worry about it too much. But all the rest of them match. So at this point, right now, my 941 match what my W-2s are gonna print out, right? So I'm pretty confident that I can go and print my W-2s. Now, the only caveat that I would say here where this number for the priest is gonna be different than this number is when Twyla talked about the priest having an HSA, where they take money from their own payroll out to put into their HSA account. I do know a few priests that do that. So if yours is one of them, that part of it that they take out is going to show up on their W-2 already. So you need to add that to the amount. Well, no, Twyla, you'll give the total, right?
Yep.
So Twyla will give the total. When I'm going to switch over here now to back to my presentation. Okay, so all this we talked about here, right? The next thing that I would do, and I'm gonna flip back over to Parasoft to really make sure that your W-2s are correct. The other thing that doesn't really print out on this taxable pay and withheld are the deductions that you have to verify down in each of the employees' deductions or the priest, right? So if you go back to payroll reports, end of period, this deductions and benefits. Now this report is very important on a monthly basis also, because this is the report. If you print this, here we're going to go back to December, and then I come and I highlight from, I don't put in any of the taxes in, federal or, the local taxes, because I only care about deductions right now. I've already processed my taxes. So I'm going to highlight all of so it's just the miscellaneous deductions and benefits that are out there, okay? So when you preview that, and this is, so when you get this report is very nice because it gives you the month to date. Now, December obviously isn't done for this parish, right? But the quarter, so on a monthly basis, if you're wondering, Al, am I really withholding what it says out of who's where? Am I really withholding the right amounts, and is it coming out right? This is the report, a great report to run to verify against what's in who's where and what you should be withholding out of your employees, okay? So it gives you all the quarters, it gives you the calendar year and the fiscal year. So I would export this out to Excel also, okay? And then I just do, and this is where you have to be a little bit, in Excel knowledgeable, but I just copied that whole report and I added a new worksheet in on my payroll one, and I copied the deductions out over to this other spreadsheet. Now, employee 3 actually has deductions that are going to show up, so that's why I wanted to do this to show you, okay? So we come back here. Now that's that report. Now once you've established that your numbers are all correct, you're ready to go, right? So we're going to just go, and now when Twyla said it should all be set up, right? So I'm assuming that you all have your W-2 categories set up correctly. If you look at your deductions, and on this deduction report, it doesn't match this next step that we're going, call Jean or I, and we'll walk through your W-2 setup. But I can't imagine that that there's any of you that have that not set up correctly, okay? So I'm going to go back into Parasoft here. So at this point, we're ready to print our W-2s. So the first thing we do, we're going to go into Forms, and we're going to go to, and the W-2 setup, this is what I'm talking about when I say it should already be set up. So we're going to go to Edit Employee W-2 Information. When we get in here, remember, we're going to hit that Reprocess All. Now this is very important because this is what pulls your 2019 payroll information into your W-2s, all right? If you don't do that, you probably still have the 2018 information in here, and so you don't want to, your numbers will not match. So the first thing you do is hit that Reprocess All. Now, on a normal basis, you are just going to really have to go into your priest, right? Because, and I actually put this in yesterday, but this would not be here. The X would not be here, this DD would not be here, and I actually have the wrong number because I just took the 920, or I took the 900 times that. So really for this priest, it would be $10,920 because he has been at this parish all year long, okay? So again, if your priest has been there for 6 months, it's only 6 months of the time, whether it's first 6 months, second 6 months, or there's even, I know at least one parish out there that had a priest for 7 months. So 6 months at the first, 1 month at the second figure. So just know what it is there. So this priest, I don't know if they are in the high deductible or not, but if they would come, and then that's W. And then and they obviously did not withhold themselves from their own payroll, right? Because if they did, this W would already be out there. And they would have, say, maybe $600 out there. A lot of priests will withhold $50 a month, right? That's what I've seen anyway. So then you get, oh, Twyla gave me, it should be $1,600, right? So they withheld the $50 each a month, and then the diocese will contributes $1,000 a year to the priest's HSA. So that's what this priest then would have, okay? And then up here, I've already changed it, but you would want to change their wages from this 28,442, which was there, to the 21,482, which is what is there now, okay? Once you've got these all changed and everything typed in, you want to hit submit. Now, if you hit reprocess all again now, after you've made these changes, that's all going to go away. All your changes will go away. So do not hit reprocess all again, ever, okay? don't do that. The only time you would want to hit reprocess, even the reprocess, is if you made it, like if, it's December 31st and Father said, oh, I forgot, I want to, but I don't even know of really a situation because that's not even really realistic. So I'm going to go into employee 3 here. This is the employee that has, I don't have her name there, but has the deductions. So if you look at the deductions here, and you come here, there's the 6314. That is the total of her 2 health insurance, okay? There is the 563. That is the amount of money that she herself has put into her retirement plan. And then the 687.50 is what she has put into, what she has deducted out of her salary into her HSA plan. What's that?
It's both sides, right?
Both sides.
The deduction and the benefits.
You know what? It's just the benefit. She did not do it herself. So you're right. Yes, it would be both if she did it. Thank you for that clarification.
The employer and employee.
Yes. Yes. W is employer and employee. All right. So you can, if you want, stay here and look at all the employees one by one in here, right? But they should be right. So after you finish your priest and get your priest all done, what I would do is I would come back in here and I would go back to your, forms, your W-2s and W-3s now. And then it's going to say, did you reprocess all and fix everything you need? Yes, we did. Now you want to hit your calendar, make sure your calendar year is that. Then down here, there's this W-2 review report. If you print that report and then you compare it to that deduction report and your wage for each person, that will tell you if you've got everything right, okay? So it's just a little half-page report for each person. It's real easy to read, and I'm not going to bring it up here, but we have that. Then if you go down here, now the copy A to up blank paper, That is what you want to print. That can be printed on plain paper, right? You don't need the red forms for the W-2s. You haven't for years. So just print that out on blank paper. You'll print it to a PDF, just like the checks and all the other ones. So I usually, again, I will print this to PDF, save it out to print file for 2019. Then the copy D would be your employer's copy, right? You can print this if you want, but again, I'm going to tell you at the end, after father assigned the W-3, make the copy of the W-3 and all the W-2 copy A's. So you really could have that as your copy, right? You don't really need a copy A, copy, and a copy D, but it's up to you. You can scan one if you want. And the copy 1 is really only for people that have state income tax. So, you know, probably the one that we do for the Nebraska, we would need to print that, but otherwise you guys do not need to print that. South Dakota does not have that. Then the W-2 employee copies, B and C 4-up blank paper. This is what you're going to send to your employees. Now, this you can print to blank paper and you can send it, but if you do not, if you didn't order from us or if you don't go buy the 4-up perforated, doesn't even have to be perforated, but with the instructions on the back, you have got to print the instruction page. Now, again, they don't have an instruction page on here, I don't believe, but I will get one and I'll email that out to you too. So for as cheap as those W-2s are for the ink and your paper that you're going to have to send, you might as well have ordered those 4-up perforated ones for your employees. And then now the pre-printed 2-up, you don't need to print because you've printed the blank paper here. And then the W-3 blank paper is the other one that you need to print. So you need to print 1. Really, the only ones you have to, if you're going to take a copy, are the 2-up blank paper, the W-2 employee copy, and then the W-3 blank paper. And that W-3, again, does not need to be a red form. And so you print that and print that to PDF. Twyla, do you have any inclination as to when you think you'll be sending those numbers out?
Our hope is to have those out to parishes before January 10th.
Okay, so if you can get everything reviewed before January 10th, and you know, like, other than, okay, so if you know that nobody in your plan or your priest isn't on HSA, you could do these W-2s on January 2nd, get them sent out and to the employees, right? So the one thing I'm going to say over and over and over again, do not mail in your 941 fourth quarter report or your government W-3 and W-2 copy A's until probably January 28th to the 31st, right? Because if an employee comes back, if father comes back and says, hey, I forgot a month, I found my mileage, I forgot, I want this taken off, blah, blah, blah. You know, you really need to do it. If you've already sent in your 941, you know, I mean, you can still do it, but now we have to go through the whole process of doing a corrected 941, and it's a hassle. You know, we'll help you with it, just let us know, but it is a hassle. So please do not mail those 941s in or the government copies of the W-2 or W-3s until at least the 28th. Give people some time, as much time as possible. If you have everything else done and looked at by the 10th, when Twyla gets that number out, you can change all that stuff, and you should be ready to go. Just trying to think. I think that is the presentation. Does anybody here have any questions? Anything, Twyla, you want to add? Any questions on the online? All right, well, thank you all. An hour and a half. Okay, it was a half hour longer than I wanted, but it was I think it was good questions. And if anybody has any questions while you're going along, please give Jean or I or Twyla's office a call. Twyla's office, don't call them about processing the W-2s. They're more the insurance, the HSA information, stuff like that, and then Jean or I can help you with the rest of it. So thank you for participating, and we're just going to sign off.